This is Mile High.
Do I want to tell the story or do I want to show the message?
You've got a lot of work to do between Mile High.
The time has come where we can know
we have a responsibility, an ethical and moral responsibility.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right, it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
it's now time for the show.
Welcome to the Mile High podcast. Thank you for joining us from whatever altitude you are. You know that we are at the altitude of a mile high, which is where we anticipate you to be in September of 2024. Make sure you do two things. One, hit subscribe so you never miss any Mile High tick. And most certainly, mark your calendar if you have not already to join us in September. In Mile High territory. You want to be on higher ground in September 26th, 29th, and all the details are at riseuptomilehigh.com. And today I am so thrilled to have fun with Dr. Tim Zittle. He was on stage this year for the first time at Mile High. He's helped us with Mile High many times. It was really fun to have on stage. He's really an incredible leader for healthcare in our paradigm. He's been a pivotal force for leading teams. He's helped thousands of kids and athletes. He moved to Parker in 2019 and started his dream of Treehive, which we'll talk about. It's really an incredible community that he's created in his office. He has empowered CEOs and teams, and he's really just an incredible human being. I'll say that as the main thing I'd like to say about Dr. Tim Zittle. So thank you for joining us today, Dr. Tim.
Thank you. I mean, with an introduction like that, I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say.
I can't wait to hear what I'm going to say as well.
Exactly.
So I know this is going to go into many different directions.
Yeah, you are on a roll. That's amazing.
So let's start out with getting to know you better, because some people know you, but I'm sure lots of people don't. So first of all, how'd you find your way into the chiropractic world?
That's a great question. And it was, it was a means to an end. And I don't say that lightly or unintentionally. It's with a lot of thought and looking back over, how did I get here? I always knew growing up that I wanted to be in a profession that helped people. So for a long time, there was a running joke in my family. My mom was a nurse midwife. My dad was a funeral director, a mortician. And so the joke was, she brings him in, he takes him out. We need somebody to cover everything in the middle family business. And they've since retired, so I can't use that anymore. Well, I guess I just did. So we're keeping it alive. But it was really just about finding my niche. Where was it going to, I knew that I didn't have the stomach to watch people in childbirth. And I also knew that, I didn't necessarily have the passion to help people in their time of grief. And so watching my parents in these service industries did help me understand that I wanted to be in the service industry. And when I was 12 or 13 years old, after going through the gamut of different professional opportunities, everything from wanting to be a Navy pilot to wanting to train animals for Hollywood movies, everything in between. My imagination was all over the place. I watched a movie by the name of Patch Adams with Robin Williams in the lead. And that movie fundamentally altered the course of my life. It was a light bulb moment, this eureka moment of seeing, the character of Patch Adams, which I love that it's based on a true story. Someone who is so deeply hurting and wounded and sick themselves, mentally, physically, emotionally, starting their healing journey and realizing through their healing journey that they wanted to help other people feel the same. And at that point in time, I didn't have a lot of physical ailments. And in terms of my exposure to chiropractic, it was a little limited. We would go with my mom when she would get adjusted off and on, but it was never necessarily a regular thing. It wasn't like a scheduled, every week or anything like that on the dot. We had what I like to call, a drug problem, right? My mom just drug us with her everywhere she went, right? And the chiropractor was one of those places. And so we got to see people getting adjusted. We got to fall in love with our childhood chiropractors when we would get adjusted, but it wasn't a part of our lifestyle. And so I didn't know a lot about it from a scientific perspective, and I didn't know a lot about it from a career perspective, but I knew I wanted to help people in healthcare. So my start actually came in physical therapy. When I was an undergrad going into my postgrad, I got to work as a physical therapist assistant all the way through that time for about 4 years. And as luck would have it, the specific clinic I was in was a spine center. And I was
Oh,
helping people
interesting.
on the other side of these fusions and surgeries and all of these things. And I was seeing how much their quality of life was absolutely obliterated by these procedures. And I mean, we're trying to help them
Wow,
literally,
that's so interesting.
yeah, walk up a step, much less, get back to some form of normal life. And so I got to see that, and the pain and the heartache as they went through these procedures. And I also was confused because I was watching these orthos and these doctors, and it wasn't like this person was in some type of like tragic car crash to where they were already partially paralyzed and they needed the surgery. These were regular average Joes that just had back pain or they had sciatica. And the first response was, let's just do surgery. Let's just remove the disc. Let's just,
Right.
and so it was confusing. I didn't understand it, but I thought this is just the way it was. Well, when I came to transfer into my doctorate program, I was either going to go into cardiology or PT. Those were the two things that were interesting me at the time.
Mhm.
And I just really started seeing some of the discrepancies and some of the hypocrisies in our modern medical system with how we were caring for patients, but it was really more about caring for symptoms. And that, along with some of the opportunities I wanted to pursue the most, in terms of the schools I wanted to go to, there were all these crazy things happening. We're talking like one school was up for accreditation right when I was going to apply, and they literally were not going to accept students that semester because they were focusing on their reaccreditation. The other one, the head of the transfer department got deathly ill, and so for that, it created a shift, and they shut down the transfer department for 6 months, right? And all these doors started closing, and I was like, well, I don't want to sit on my hands. What else is available to me? And it just so happened that my childhood chiropractors, who I love so dearly, were none other than Kevin and Selena Sigafus Jackson.
Ah,
And they said, hey, we heard through the grapevine you're looking to do something in healthcare, and we think chiropractic's the way to go. And if you're willing to explore this as an option, we're going to set you up with a visit to a place called Life University in Atlanta, Georgia. And so I went to Life. I really didn't know a lot about chiropractic, and I was there for a weekend, and I got to hear Dr. James Chestnut speak, and I got to get introduced to some really amazing people in the profession. And it was game over from there. Once I got in the environment, when I got in the bubble, it sold me on it. And later that year, switched over, went full chiropractic the whole way, and showed up green around the ears and left loving life.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Many people are in other health professions and change direction. A lot of people don't know this. Rochelle, Dr. Rochelle, my wife, she was actually in pharmacy school, and
Wow.
she was pretty near graduation, and she just made a quick shift to a different paradigm in terms of going to school, and like just left the program, and she already had a job lined up. So a lot of people don't commonly find like, this is not what I thought this health profession was, and find the way to chiropractic. So it's really neat to see that about you. So I know you're passionate about teams. Why are you passionate about teams working together?
Well, I was on a team from the earliest time I could remember. I'm the second oldest of 11 kids, so I grew up on a team whether I liked it or not. And as the second oldest, my parents were kind of like the CEOs and COOs of the family. And we had an entire management system built into, from the oldest kids to the youngest kids. And so
Really?
oh yeah,
That's
some of the most
interesting.
valuable life lessons I learned about leadership, I learned at a very young age, like helping my little siblings grow and mature and lead themselves the way that my parents taught me to lead myself and how to lead them. And so that was my first exposure to leadership, came very young. And then while I was in chiropractic school, I got introduced to a guy by the name of Ronnie Doss, one of my
Okay.
real life heroes. And he got to learn under some really phenomenal leadership experts, guys by the name of Brian Tracy and people of the same, vein, and got to rub elbows with them, and learn from them, and became a very, and still is today, a very, very influential coach. He works with NASA, with the Mars Corporation, Wall Street, all over the place
Wow.
behind the scenes. Yeah, just an incredibly impactful
I
individual.
know him. I didn't know he did that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. He's very humble. So he doesn't talk a lot about himself, but he is extremely well connected in terms of who he teaches and who he mentors. And I got the express privilege of being able to learn from him from the first team I was ever a part of, when I was graduating from school and joining the first practice as an associate. My boss was a good personal friend of his. And so through that friendship, I became close with Ronnie as well, and basically got to, sit at his feet and listen to his teaching for the last 9 years. And so from that, it turned into an internship where I started getting to work with him and some of his teams and going with him around the country, helping him facilitate these masterminds and working with these really high performers in their companies. And through the whole time, as I was in these different practice opportunities, going from an associate to being in a partnership and now having a practice where I had associates and team, one of the first exposures I ever had to chiropractic was with two extremely successful docs. We're talking about guys seeing thousands of people a week in their practices at the pinnacle of our profession. And the one thing they said they would absolutely, give up in a heartbeat was team. They said team's the hardest part of practice. They were like, we would do every part of practice over and over again, but team's the one part you can't keep them. There's turnover. They don't listen. They have all these issues. And I said, from that moment, if me as a student ready to graduate is looking up to these absolute legends in chiropractic, and their biggest issue is team stuff, that's the hill I'm going to die on. I'm going to get obsessive about learning about teams and how to help teams work better together. And so the last 10 years has just been this beautiful exploration into what makes people tick, what makes people buy into something. And we're really, really good as chiropractors of helping people buy into the concept of chiropractic, the general public. But oftentimes we're equally as deficient in helping our team buy into our vision, and our team buy into our mission, and our team buy into excellent customer service, which is oftentimes even more important.
Yeah. I have to tell you, one of my most impactful mentors. He always said it starts with teams, that you start with teams. I didn't understand it at the time. He said, the first thing you build is your team. I didn't get it, because I thought at that time, there's got to be a magic script. Like, well, tell me how it is I convert people. What's the way I get people in the door? And he kept saying, you have to build your team first. I know how true it is now, because we had, every practice has ups and down years, right? You have years where you're just moving forward, and years that like you go backwards. If you're going to be in practice 25 years, that's what happens, so, and every time we've had like forward motion, like consistent 2, 3, 4 years of growth, it's because we had a great team. And every time it's not, you feel like you're pushing the cart up the hill, and it's like all you pushing it's because there's something wrong with your team. It could be the whole team, or it could be one person that's somehow out of sync. There's one flat tire out of the 4 on the car every time. And it's such a hard thing to help chiropractors value.
Well, and it became even harder when chiropractors, and if we look at ourselves also as entrepreneurs, right? Every chiropractor that owns their own business is also a business owner. They're a business person. And so oftentimes when we're coming out of school, we're very well equipped with chiropractic knowledge, where we're not always the best equipped if we haven't had the support of an organization like Mile High, where we have these successful business people that can pour back into us. But some students, they didn't find those organizations. They didn't find that extracurricular type of support. And so they're coming out with this beautiful chiropractic knowledge and not always the best business knowledge. So we default to the societal norm. And back in the 80s and 90s, there was this concept of the only thing that matters in business, and it was when big business was booming, everything was turning into a big corporation, was shareholder profits.
Right.
And in order to get shareholder profits, it comes by saying things like the customer's always right. If the customer's always right, they're going to keep buying. And so we took a customer-centered approach, or in our profession, a patient-centered approach. We will sacrifice everything, give up everything, make ourselves a victim to the idea of we need to give the patient what they want. Okay. And then from there, what happens is you've got leaders who are sacrificing for their teams, who are sacrificing for their patients. And then that creates an unhealthy backflow. Whereas if instead we said, what if as a leader, my highest priority was on my own personal health as a leader? Then from my healthy space, I am able to give and invest in my team to help them be healthy as a team. And then from all of us being healthy, we get to show our patients what health looks like. And that is absolutely backwards from how all of big business has done it for the last several decades. And it's a very difficult thing to teach people because we think, well, if I focus on self, then these other people, they will be at a disadvantage. I won't be able to give them what they want. And the problem that we fail to take into account is that when I'm not healthy, no matter what I give them, it's going to be unhealthy, which is going to turn into a bad situation for them. If I am not healthy as a practitioner, I'll never be able to give my patient the best care that they deserve. As opposed to if I am healthy, even if I cannot meet all of their needs, whatever energy I do have to give them is going to be a beautiful energy that they will be super happy and excited to accept from me. And until we can understand this, what I've personally experienced all the way up until even the past several years, where I've been able to learn how to do the opposite from leaders like you and leaders like Dr. Elise and Ronnie, right? What I was doing for so long is I was completely abandoning myself as a leader and my own personal health and my own mental health and my boundaries in order to give my team all the things I thought they needed to be able to serve our patients. And then the team is seeing that example. And then they're sacrificing of their energy, their mental health, and it creates so much toxicity within the team. Nobody's happy, nobody's healthy. And ultimately, even if the patient on paper is getting everything they say they want, the energy it's coming from is toxic and they feel dissatisfied and they leave the practice anyways. Whereas if you flip that script, and now especially, 2023 was my year to focus on how do I get myself physically healthy? How do I get myself mentally healthy? How do I learn about the leader I need to become for me first? Then how do I lead my team better? Now I'm seeing my team follow my example and get healthy themselves as individuals. When we come together for team meetings, we've got a way better energy and output. And now our patients are healthy and thriving because they're seeing that and they're able to take from that as well, even if I'm not giving them on paper everything I was giving them before.
Right. And all that's so vital. And people come out of school and I think, well, I just got to adjust people really well. And you do have to. And I just have to know the philosophy. I know the philosophy and learn it. And I can adjust people. I have the fastest toggle or thrust. Then I'm really successful in practice. And it's so sadly not true. TRT is your approach. You can master TRT, and that doesn't mean you're going to be successful in practice. Network's your approach. You're going to be stellar at network, and that does not mean you're going to be successful in practice. I'm sure you've seen that over and over again.
All the time.
All the time. And it's sad, but chiropractic school is not designed for you to get an HR degree. It's not designed for you to get a business and marketing degree. You have to grow if you're going to run a business, and you have to grow in that area. So you mentioned Mile High, so I'm going to ask you this, and I don't remember, I know you've been to Mile High many times. I just don't remember how many times. I remember a lot, but that's one of the things I don't like. So first of all, let's talk about speaking of Mile High, but before that, what do you love about attending Mile High?
What I love about Mile High is, and I think this year was probably one of my most favorite out of all the Mile Highs I've been to. I love the fact that when people are speaking at Mile High, there's this beautiful blend of the pure education, right? Being able to hear from people that are the foremost educators and scholars in their field. When we're hearing about people talking about polyvagal, right? And I mean, the level of understanding and knowledge and just scientific breakdown that's there is mind-blowing at times. Right. I mean, just burning up the notes. And at the same time, you have this beautiful balance of these people whose hearts are just on fire for chiropractic, for the philosophy of it, for the art of it, right? And so there's this amazing dichotomy of the knowledge and the science. And then you've got this beautiful, fiery, passionate philosophy. And then you've got this very technically sound art. And I think Mile High, like in a way, if you could take all the speakers and put them together and boil down Mile High to a single premise, Mile High is one of the best representations of the three-legged stool. Like, it's all there.
I'm glad you picked up on my formula.
Yes.
A lot of people don't realize that, but what you said really put exactly together what it is that I put into my mindset, and then add in the fourth leg of the stool. People always philosophy, science, art, but the fourth leg, business. It's like
Yeah.
you got to have a little bit on business. Now, what did you appreciate about being on stage? Because this was your first time on stage.
Yeah, I think for me it was a beautiful gift of being able to give back to the community. When I'm sitting there in the room and I'm gleaning from all of these incredible minds and beautiful intellects, in and of itself, it's a privilege. Anytime you get to step into a room where you're benefiting from the hard work of these people who have dedicated their lives to the study and the practice of these things, it's a beautiful environment to be able to share that stage and to be able to give from a heart so overflowing with gratitude for what they've taught me over the years, and be able to say, hey, let me give a little back to you guys from the beauty that I've received. I mean, it was a bucket list type of experience to look around that room and see every single person dialed in. You just don't see that at a lot of conferences, especially, I mean, speaking in the middle of the day. Coming in after lunch and people are dialed in, right? There's no like food coma. There's no, I mean, like they're ready to go. They're locked in and they're taking notes and they're invested. And I've had the privilege of being able to speak all over the country at different events, but this one, it just hit different.
I'm glad to hear that. There's the people that speak at Mile High, that they know that it's an audience that is that have high standards to what they're going to receive, and the people that speak bring an incredible content and a game. And I also really appreciate that, as you know, when I created it, I thought I was like, we have to give the best speakers, and that's one of our goals. But then, like after 2, 3, 4 years in, people said to me, like, asked what did you like about it? I'm trying to find out what you like or what's your favorite thing, and they never said the speakers. They said that they love the community and connecting with people and talking to people, and it like made me scratch my head because I didn't realize that was one of the best parts. So it was, I'm glad we hit quality speakers that want to bring great, content, but also that people love getting to see their friends and have an experience of connection and community, because we need that in chiropractic. I want to ask you the next question here. How long have you been in practice?
This is my ninth year. So
Ninth year
graduated
in practice.
2015. So yeah.
So what's a top lesson you learned in the 9 years of practice?
Oh, that's a good one. I think probably the highest lesson that I ever learned was a concept that was really, really cemented in my mind, kind of brain tattooed in a way, by a guy named Dr. Brad Glowacki. And he said, high intention and low attachment. And I think where I see so many leaders get discouraged, and they don't just get discouraged in their own personal lives, but with their team or with their patients even, is we as chiropractors, for the most part, like I can't think of many, if any, chiropractors I've ever walked up to or met or had an interaction with where I said, like, man, they have really low intentions. Like they just really don't care, right? Everybody care. I mean, they've just got a heart bursting at the seams, the highest of intentions, the best of intentions. But with that often comes a high attachment to how things should look or should be or should feel. And it sets us up for a lot of disappointment, because if something doesn't ever measure up to our expectation of what it looks like, then we automatically believe that either our intention was misplaced or we didn't have a good enough intention, or we start to question, like, should we have an intention at all? Like, is it worth having a heart this big to work so hard for people that don't seem to care about the work the way that we care about the work? I'm sure you've heard the old adage, nobody's going to care about your practice as much as you do. And I've actually seen the complete opposite of that. I've seen a team that cares more about the practice than the doctor, because after years, they get beat down so much that they just tell themselves they don't care anymore, just so they're not disappointed by that high attachment. Whereas on the flip side, if we can walk into every situation in life with this beautiful intention, wanting to love, to do, to give, to serve, but having little to no attachment of how people receive it, what their response is, how they show up to it. If they say yes to chiropractic care in our office, or if they say no, if they tell us they love us, or if they tell us they don't like us, right? If we have no attachment to that, but we're just going to keep giving and loving and doing and serving, regardless of the expectation or the response or the reality, there's such a beautiful freedom that exists in that space. And it's something that I love to advocate for and encourage for every chiropractor, every team, even every patient.
That's a powerful one. So that I hope people who listen to this or watch it, whichever way they're doing, to take it to heart. Because some people watch this on the app or on a different channel, some listen. So let me ask you this. People can find adversity in practice and adversity in life as a chiropractor. How do people overcome that?
It's funny. I feel like funny in an ironic way. I feel like the last 5 years, especially, has been some of the highest triumphs and victories and some of the lowest valleys and adversity I've ever experienced as a human being in my life. And um, I would say the first piece of it is an awareness piece. Um, I've heard it said that awareness is the beginning of change, but self-awareness is the beginning of progress. And I believe that there's in every bit of adversity, there's an opportunity to increase self-awareness. And like I was saying earlier, I've come to realize that for most of my life and most of my life in practice, I was so singularly focused on pleasing everyone around me, showing up for everyone around me, to the tune of paying my team more than I was paying myself, giving my team anything and everything they wanted, and having a lower quality of life myself, working longer hours just so that my patients could have what I thought they wanted or what they needed, giving people care for free or at little to no cost, just because they had, it was inconvenient for them to want to pay the regular amount of care. I mean, anything and everything you can imagine, I was sacrificing. And in doing so, I was creating such an unhealthy place and an adverse place, to the point where I have made critical mistakes as a leader. I've lashed out at teams. I've driven team members away. I've made poor decisions that affected, the lives of people, long around me, and not just my own. And through all of that, if you're sitting here and you're listening to this and you're watching this, my hope is that through all of that, you understand that it's just about taking the next step forward, right? If and when we get caught up in the action, we get caught up in the mistake, we get caught up in the adversity, and we stop there. We tell ourselves, this is who we are as a person. We are a mistake. We make mistakes, right? That is where growth stops. That's where it ends. That's where, we curl up in the fetal position and we're a lifelong victim. But it's just about saying, what do I take from this? What do I learn from this? How do I grow from this? And taking that next step, that process, and doing that every single day, that is the best, and in my mind, the only way to truly win in the face of any adversity, no matter how big or how small.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And again, I hope people who are listening or watching take this to heart. How and now when people are running a practice, one of the things they run into as a difficulty is people starting care. And that can be heartbreaking. I know this is many years ago. It was the first few months in my practice in Spartanburg, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing, which is like most chiropractors that start out. I had my days of being in tears of like, don't they get it? It's life saving. Why I don't I just tell them subluxation is important, and they'll just start care. How do you make easier for people to say yes to care and to stay under care?
This might be one of my most favorite questions you've asked me this whole time. I am absolutely obsessive about studying the science and the psychology behind how and why people buy things, ideas, concepts, ways of life, right? And in that research and that study, thousands of hours of reading and studying and looking into these things, what I found is, to boil it down to make it as simple as possible, is we reach them where they are at, so that
Mhm.
we can teach them what they need. This is
Ah.
where I see so many chiropractors beat their heads against the wall endlessly because we're trying to bring this beautiful knowledge of subluxation and this beautiful knowledge of the art, philosophy, science, and we try and give them the kitchen sink of everything we learned in chiropractic school in 15 minutes on their day one or on their day two. Okay. And it oftentimes takes somebody who's just sitting here saying, I'm in pain and I need help. And
Mhm.
it overwhelms them to the point where they have trouble making a decision. And if there's anything that we know about human psychology, it's that when someone is confused, they don't
Mhm.
consume, right? Confused
Right.
consumers don't buy. And so what we've found success with through learning from leaders like you and Dr. Rochelle, Dr. Elise, Dr. Brad, right? Like all of these people is I watched them very carefully. And what I found was they always reach the person where they're at that day. If
Mhm.
somebody walks into my office and they're familiar with chiropractic care, they've been adjusted before, or they've done research on it, right? I'm going to go a little bit more into the science, into the subluxation. I'm going to drop some of these things on them. But if somebody's walking in and they're saying, listen, I've been to every other doctor I can think of, I've never been to a chiropractor, I'm terrified to be here in the first place, I've heard you kill people, right? Whatever that is, this messed up psychology they're coming in with, right? I've heard you're going to literally crack me in half and I might not even be able to get off the tail. But I just need help. Okay. The first thing that we're going to do with them is we're going to say, okay, let's see how we can help you. Right. And if we start from that place and say, hey, this is what you have going on. So first, we've clearly identified these are the actual steps of getting them to that process, right? Reaching them where they're at. First, we identify what is their problem. A lot of times when people walk in, they think they know what their problem is. Okay. And it's about discovering and helping them realize what their real problem is. So if someone walks in and they say, hey, I'm having headaches, right? My first question is going to be, is there anything else going on in addition to the headaches, right? Because if I can help them see that it's not just the headaches, but there's a systemic whole body concern, then it's going to be a lot easier for me to say the nervous system that controls your whole body is not in good shape, which is why you're having systemic whole body issues. Okay.
Right.
So if we can
Right.
create a big picture and then I can say, hey, this is what I often see causes things like headaches. I see that the brain and body aren't talking well to each other. This is how I would talk to anybody, whether they're a grown adult, right, in the twilight years of life, or a little kid, right? Brain and body, they're not talking well to each other, and it creates a disconnect and a breakdown. And if we can help that process happen more efficiently and more effectively, your body will heal and recover. Does that sound good to you? Yeah, that's exactly what I want. That's why I'm here. Okay. In science, we call that a subluxation. I just want you to remember that word. We're going to talk about it more as we go along. Cool. Now we're going to figure out the physical aspects. And now we're going to say, here's how we can help you. We have x-rays, we have this, we have that, right? And we break that down, but we keep it so simple in the beginning. After somebody begins care in my office, right? I've helped them say yes by saying, here's your problem. We've identified the problem. One of my favorite questions to ask them is, if today on the course of this first visit with you, we are able to identify what is causing this issue, is there any reason why you wouldn't be able to say yes to care? It's one of my favorite questions. And
Mm.
we identify the objection right up front in the first visit. Is there any reason why, if I say this is literally what's causing your issue and I can help you with this, is there any reason why you would not say yes to care? Well, if it takes too long. Well, if it costs too much. Well, now I know going into their report of findings, I'm already prepared to help them meet that objection, to help offset that objection so that we can make it easy for them to say yes. But only after that, and we've gotten them on the table and we're turning their life force back on, we're getting their brain and body back connected. That is when I say, hey, come to this workshop where we're going to talk about the science. We're going to break down that, because now they're in a clearer space, in a clearer thinking space. Then I get to educate them on what lifetime care looks like, how
Right.
chiropractic care is part of their lifestyle, after I'm already helping them deliver on the goods and seeing the fact that I can help them and get them results.
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful. I appreciate it. And I love how you're thinking, which is another reason why I had you speak this year. Now, with that being said, is there any last things you'd like to share with our chiropractic and student, doctors and student audience?
I think for me, I just love this. Has kind of been stuck in my head ever since we talked about it a couple minutes ago. I just love the idea of encouraging anybody who encounters this, who sees this, who's listening to this. conversation. Number one, the win is that you're here looking for knowledge. If you just came here and you listened to this conversation, if for nothing else, just to hear something new, you are already in the top percentage of people who are learning and growing because you're actively looking for ways to better yourself. Pat yourself on the back. That's something to be proud of. But information without action is useless. Okay. And so I want to make sure that I leave you with something, an encouragement of a way to act on what we've talked about here today. And that is first and foremost, if you're in a place of adversity, if you're in a low, if you're in a valley in your life, I want to encourage you to look out to your inner circle and look to receive some support and help. There's so many people in our lives that are willing to help and support us, but they just don't know that we need it. And we're really good at wearing the mask and making it seem like we've got everything together all the time. And that is honorable. It's just not healthy, or admirable. It's just not healthy. Okay. And so reach out to your people and get support if you're struggling. And then the second thing is as you continue to work and make yourself better, create your dream life as an individual, which will then help you create your dream life for your team. And that will help you and your team create your dream life for your patients. That is the winning formula. And if you're willing to take the steps to reverse engineer everything we've been told, I think you're going to find a ton of success, and success that will be sustainable for the long term, which is where we all win.
Sustainability is so important. People do so many things that are not sustainable in practice, and being 25 years in, I'm well aware of that. It's funny when you watch things. So I'm very glad you use that word. And I'm very glad that you took the time to be on this podcast, and also extremely glad that you have not only attended Mile High multiple times, but also joined us on stage this past year. It was really great to have you. And, it's glad we have some incredible hub of chiropractors in the Mile High State. And I'm glad to, have you and welcome you as one of those. So thank you for your contributions at the state level, and in addition to your practice and around the world.
Thank you so much. It's my privilege. It's so cool to be able to learn from and follow the example of chiropractors like you and Dr. Rochelle and this entire network in the Mile High community and beyond. You guys are doing amazing things. And I know there's the phrase, don't get weary in well doing. I just want you to know and give a little love back to you and tell you that there's lots of people that are being encouraged and inspired and are pursuing greater action and making bigger impact in their communities because of the work you guys are doing. And we're very appreciative of that.
Oh, thank you so much for saying that. It means a lot to me. So thank you for listening, subscribing. You hit subscribe button, didn't you? Listening, subscribing to the Mile High podcast, joining us on this episode. And you never want to miss Mile High tick, so make sure you hit subscribe. And of course, you don't want to miss Mile High in September of 2024. So riseuptomilehigh.com. And thank you again for taking the time today, Dr. Tim, and everybody who's watching and listening. Keep changing spines, lives, and minds with chiropractic.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.